Dim substitutions, what are they, how do they work, and everything about them. This is going to be a bit of a longer one because diminished chords are really interesting and really complex in a certain way. So let's dive in. Now first of all, what do I mean by a dim substitution? Well, dim is a diminished chord. We're talking about diminished seventh chords. So that's a tonic, minor third, diminished fifth, and diminished seventh, which is enharmonic to the major sixth, but it's a diminished seventh. Now these chords are symmetrical, by which I mean the distance from each note to the next is a minor third, all the time, every time. So you could play the arpeggio like this: one minor third, then move to the diminished fifth and go up a minor third, then move to the one and go up a minor third, to the diminished fifth, up a minor third, so you get, it's a very typical way to play an arpeggio like that. Not the only way, but a very typical way. Now, why is that relevant? Well, it's going to be very relevant here. The reason is that a F diminished chord, therefore, has the same note content as an A flat diminished chord. I mean, it doesn't matter which note we're starting on. If we're just going to stack minor thirds, we're going to reach the same note content. Same for B diminished or C flat, what we're going to call B, and the same for D. All those diminished chords are the same diminished chord in terms of note content. The only difference is which note is the bass note. That's it. Everything else is the same. So that's pretty interesting. If you ever see people move a chord up in minor thirds like this, that's a diminished chord. It's such a cliche, honestly. Usually, I'll say that cliches are just fine. Cliches are just common harmonic devices or common melodic devices, and there's a reason why they're common. There's nothing wrong with them. But I don't know, I have a certain dislike from moving them up in minor thirds, just going up and down. I think you could do something more original with diminished chords, and you can do something different every time. But for now, for the explanation, let's conceptualize it this way, as a chord that can move up in minor thirds. Okay, so why is this relevant? Well, let's take a look at where we get this diminished chord from. We get it from harmonic minor. Now let's look at harmonic minor again and take the major seventh and see which chord we end up with. So in the key of A, that would be G sharp diminished. Why is this relevant? Well, what's the reason we came up with harmonic minor again? It's the 5 chord. Of course, it's the 5 chord. This is the reason it's called harmonic minor instead of any other name. It's so we can restore our dominant tonic relationship, which in the natural minor scale is kind of broken, but now we've returned the leading tone, so the 5 chord is now a dominant chord again. And let's take a look at the note content of E7 and G sharp diminished. And you'll see that they're practically the same. There's one note that moved one semitone. So it's a little bit more tension moving to A minor. But it's functionally speaking, it's just an E7 chord. It's a substitution for E7. So we've got E7 going to A minor. And now which diminished chord will also lead to A minor? Typically, the standard answer would be G sharp diminished. But because you know that diminished chords are symmetrical, it might as well be F diminished, moving to A minor. Or B diminished, leading to A minor. Or D diminished, leading to A minor. Now some of these will be a bit more obvious because G sharp will just, it will move very naturally. B diminished kind of as well. Now the others are a bit more weird, and you would typically use them to move to an inversion of A minor. And you can do this with diminished chords anyway. So let's say we're going to go from A minor to a diminished chord to A minor in first inversion. And then again to a diminished chord to A minor in another inversion. And maybe this one would be more obvious. Well, let's go down. If we want to go from A minor to D minor, we can do this. we can make it a bit more interesting by moving from A minor to a diminished chord, moving to D minor. But we can make it even more interesting. You can use A minor, take a diminished chord that leads to the first inversion of A minor, then a diminished chord that leads to D minor. And in gypsy jazz they might do something like this. And that's a way to move from A minor to D minor and place diminished chords in between in order to, well, keep moving, to keep the harmony moving. What do we play over a diminished chord? Well, that's a difficult one. We've got the arpeggio, so that's always an option. You can always just play chord tones, and generally speaking, in diminished chord won't just be laid down for 2 bars in one go, and you have to play a melody that goes over it continuously. However, there's definitely a scale you can use. And typically it's the chord tone, and then below each chord tone, a semitone below it, you place a leading tone. And this goes on and on. And this gives you whole tone, semitone, whole tone, semitone, whole tone, semitone, whole tone, semitone, and on and on. This is an octatonic scale. It's a different one than we use over dominant chords, at least that's what it seems like, because that would be a semitone and then a whole tone, then a semitone and then a whole tone. And now we use the other version of octatonic. However, if we use, what am I playing now, F? If we use F octatonic for the diminished chord, so that's the whole half version, we'll have the same notes that we would use over E7. Semi, whole, semi, whole, semi. It's the same scale. So E7 uses the same scale as the diminished chord that replaces it. In both cases this would be the octatonic scale. However, if E is the bass, we're going to call it the half-whole version, and if any of the diminished chords are lying underneath this, then we're going to play the whole half version, but it's the same collection of notes. They work for both chords. So that's kind of interesting and kind of weird. Now, because diminished chords are symmetrical, because 4 different versions of them all lead to the same place, you could also say that one diminished chord leads to 4 different places. It works that way around as well. So typically we would say G sharp diminished moves to A minor. And so F diminished would move to F sharp or G flat, whatever. And it could be major, it could be minor, doesn't matter. And B diminished would lead to C, C, C minor, whatever it is. And D diminished would lead to E flat. But this means if all those chords are just inversions of G sharp diminished, then G sharp diminished can move to F sharp or G flat, A, C, and E flat. It can move to any of those chords. And this is really convenient if you want to modulate to a different key. If you got a chord progression that, I don't know, let's say so let's say this is your chord progression. And this diminished chord leading to D, that's C sharp diminished. It might as well be a different diminished chord like B flat. You could play the same melody over it and sing the same melody over it. But hey, we're now on B minor. We used to be on D minor, which has different notes than B minor, but we move there very fluently. Da, 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 you can move in between keys very fluently using diminished chords, and they're used for this purpose all the time. And when people want to modulate smoothly, diminished chords are a great tool to have. So use this in your improvisations, use it in your compositions, and make sure you don't just apply it because it's a homework assignment, but you apply it because you prefer using that sound, and go looking for situations in which you prefer that sound, because that's how you move from understanding to hearing to feeling. See you guys next time.